Hi everyone, this is Seah once again. Thanks for joining me today. Right, today I'm going to talk about actually I'm going to unbox a DF64, which is the latest version. Right, I will probably call it the version 4, because there's some updates which I think I should share with everyone. And I believe the DF64 manufacturer has been listening to our complaints, and I think they have made some good improvement, right, over the different versions, right. Of course, the version 1 starts with the James Hoffman version, whereby it comes with double silicon declumper, which is not really ideal, and it causes a lot of choking. The version 2 comes with a single declumper. They reduce from 2 to 1, and then it still have a very significant clogging, especially if you have been grinding consistently, and eventually after using the grinder for about a month or two, right, your grinder will hold up too much fine coffee powder, and eventually the burr will not be able to turn. You can hear the motor humming, but the burr will not be turning because the inside of the chamber is the burr chamber is totally choked with all the coffee ground that's inside, right. The version 3, which is the previous version that we have sold, comes with the metal grind indicator, right. That's number 1. That's the improvement over version 2, right. The second improvement is they have also replaced the upper they have also inserted an additional O-ring on the upper burr carrier just below the burr, right, just below the upper burr carrier, between the upper burr carrier and the upper burr, right. So there's an extra O-ring, and recently we have our new stock just arrived, and this is now the version 4, right. And version 4, as I have seen a great improvement, right. You will see later on, but I have not tested the version 4 yet. The improvement is okay. Whatever they have done to version 3 is still there, right. And the version 4, I believe they have also included an extra O-ring at the lower burr carrier, right, which is the fix whereby we call the upper burr fix, right. The lower burr is actually the rotary, because it's actually connected to the motor. So the rotary part, there's also an extra O-ring there, right. This is actually to prevent coffee ground from getting underneath the burr and on top of the burr, right. Usually when we do grinder servicing, these are the two locations whereby you will see a lot of coffee ground get stuck there, right. And the most important update in version 4 is actually the declumper. They have improved the declumper, and so today I'm just going to open up the grinder, and I'm going to test to see whether the declumper actually works as compared to the previous version. I'm quite sure there's going to be an improvement, but how good it's going to be, right, let's test it out, right. So this is Seah once again, right. Thank you for joining me, and without further ado, let's unbox the grinder and see what's inside now for version 4. Alright, this metal grind indicator is actually from version 3, and when you use the metal grind indicator, you have to be careful because there's actually a screw button at the back to help to hold the grind indicator in place, but the screw is actually made of stainless steel, but the collar, the center collar, is actually made of aluminum. So and everyone knows that aluminum is softer. So when you screw the stainless steel screw onto the aluminum collar, you have to be more careful and gentle. Otherwise, you can actually risk scratching the aluminum collar, right? But it is pretty well made, and I will not say it's very beautiful, but it does the job. And as you can see on the center collar, there's actually an indentation that's actually caused by the stainless steel screw. When the factory tries to screw the down grind indicator on it, it creates indentation. Okay, alright, so next we'll move on to removing the collar, and to show you the improvement made in the version 4, right. So the grind indicator is actually inherited from version 3. So the version 4 comes with a few new things. So let's just open up the grinder, and then I will show you what's inside there. Right, in version 3, there's a O-ring that was actually placed below the upper burr, and in between, sandwiched in between the upper burr and the upper burr carrier.
and we call the upper burr carrier a fixed carrier because it doesn't rotate, and the lower burr, which is actually attached to the motor, is the one that's rotating, so we call it the rotary at the bottom. And that's actually how SSB is being labeled. And to unscrew the lower burr, you will need a 14 mm wrench to help to hold the center screw in place, so that it give you a more firmer hold when you try to unscrew using a Phillips screwdriver. If you do it without the 14 mm wrench holding the center screw in place, there's a risk that you can actually damage the screw by stripping the screw. And once the screw is stripped, you'll find it very hard to actually screw it tighter or remove it the next time. So be careful when you want to remove the lower burr, right? Make sure that you use a 14 mm wrench to hold the center screw in position. Okay, now with the lower burr removed, I will bring you closer to see the new improvement made in the version 4, which is actually an additional O-ring that's placed below the lower burr and sandwiched between the lower burr and the lower burr carrier. So as I zoom in, you'll be able to see it is actually translucent in color, so you can't really see it. Now you can see it. It's actually a O-ring, right? That's actually trying to reduce the amount of coffee that gets under the burr. So if you have been servicing your grinder, if you remove your burr, or when you want to switch over to other burrs such as SSB, there's always coffee ground that's actually stuck underneath this inner edge of the underside of the burr, right? So with the O-ring there, it is actually trying to prevent the coffee ground from getting underneath, and there will be a, yeah. So this is actually to prevent the coffee from getting underneath. So far, I have not, because this is actually freshly installed in version 4. In version 3, we do not have that. So I will be testing out to see whether it is really a good way to actually reduce the amount of coffee that gets under the burr. Okay, so now let's move on to show you the upper burr and the upper burr carrier. This upper burr carrier O-ring has been installed in version 3, and in version 4 they further improved by installing another one at the lower burr. So when you unscrew the upper burr, the three screws at the upper burr, you don't really need to use any wrenches, because you can just use your hand to hold on to the burr carrier, and it should be firm enough so that to prevent stripping of the screws, and it should be pretty easy to move out. You just have to give it a momentum, and then the screw should be loosened, and it should be pretty easy to get out. So you can see once the burr is removed, there's actually a O-ring that's actually stuck. Sometimes it will be stuck onto the burr, and sometimes it actually will be left behind onto the burr carrier. So, but there's actually an O-ring there, and the O-ring serves the same purpose to prevent coffee ground from getting into the getting underneath the burr. So this is actually originated from the version 3. On the version 4, they add an additional O-ring to the lower burr and the in between the lower burr and the lower burr carrier. Alright, let's proceed to remove the exit chute so that we can actually remove the declumper to show you the version 4 what has been upgraded so far. So in order to remove the center exit chute, there's actually 3 screws holding in place. The first screw actually hold the portafilter fork onto the center exit chute, and there's 2 more screws that actually hold the piece of the exit chute onto the main body. So once you do that and you open up the base, right, you should be able to remove the center exit chute, and then it expose actually the declumper that's inside there. Okay, now let's turn the grinder over to expose the base. The base of the grinder is held onto the main body with 2 screws. The 2 screw is actually pretty deep. You just need the a Phillips screwdriver, a cross Phillips screwdriver with the uh, right head so that it can actually fit the screw properly. This is the screwdriver that I use, and it's a tool that I use all the time to actually remove the screws on the entire DF64. Once the 2 screws is removed, then the base can actually be removed easily, and the base will be held together to the main body by some wires. This is where the main board is being wired, as well as the main power supply is wired to the motor, as well as the board which actually do the start and stop function of the grinder, as well as the countdown timer. So now you can see the inside of the grinder. uh, you have to remove the the hex screw that's actually holding on to the switch, and to do that you need the 19 mm wrench. So these tools will come in handy if you really want to take out the center exit chute, because the center exit chute is actually locked up by this hex screw. I think it's a nut, sorry, it's a hex nut, and once you loosen it with the 19 mm wrench, the hex nut can be actually unscrewed easily. And now you can see that the center chute has been moved aside, and the inner chute is actually screwed onto the main body with 2 screws. And let's see the new improvement over the version 4. I'm not too sure whether this is an improvement yet, but from what I've seen in my other grinders, right, there's actually 2 I mean the original silicone declumper from version 1 to version 3 has been removed, and now the version 4 to remove the silicone declumper, and now uh, it is replaced by some sort of a PET flap. And right now let me try to get some light source to show you the inside. Okay, with the light shining in at this particular angle, you can actually see the inner chute. You can see that the silicone declumper from version 1 to version 3 has been removed, and has been replaced by some sort of a PET flap. But to really see what's inside, let's try to take out this exit chute by removing the 2 screws that is holding on to it, so that it can give you a better look at the design, as well as what is the material that's made of the PET flap. Okay, now with the 2 screws removed, let's take a closer look at the design. And the design actually comes with, let's remove this and see see the design. Oh, there's actually 2 layers of PD flap. My goodness. And inner layer is actually a slit cutout of some sort. The material feel much stiffer than the material that I use. I believe it's at least 0.3 mm thick. And the inner chute is actually and there's another flap that actually designed in such a way. And I have a bad feeling about this because the material feels a lot stiffer than my version of a Declumper version 2. And so far my version 2 of Declumper is working very well. But with this, even with a single layer, it's already a lot stiffer as compared to my design. So with double layers like this, hook up behind the exit chute, I think this is not going to turn out very well. But anyway, let's give it a try to see. Let's try to grind some coffee and see the outcome. And just to give you a idea of the original version 1 to version 3 declumper, it is actually made of silicone, and the silicone is, to me, actually the silicone, even though it's thicker, but it feels more flexible as compared to the PET film that was supplied in the version 4. And the version 1 to version 3 declumper, which is made of silicone, it is at least 1 mm thick. But the PET flap, even though it's 2 layers, I believe it's only about 0.6 mm thick. I will try to use my calipers to measure it the next time. But I don't think it is thick enough, and I'm afraid that the screws actually hold the exit chute together onto the main body will actually penetrate the body and reach the inner burr, which will actually obstruct the movement of the lower burr later on. So I actually make it a very loose fit, just to make sure that the screw doesn't go all the way in, which actually obstruct and cause the lower burr to get jammed later on, which is what happened to some of my customers who actually removed the declumper entirely, and the grinder actually jammed because the screws will go all the way inside and protruding out into the grinding chamber. So after showing you the declumper design, let's um, install the switches back, and then screw the base back on, and then let's test the grinding and see how it goes this time.
Alright, so now let's test the grinder. Right, sorry, again my mic went out of battery. I think I have to switch to a better mic this time. And I will be testing the grinder now. So let's fix everything back. Right, let's fix up the upper burr as well. Right, the burr is not aligned, right, because recently I believe it is pretty well aligned out of the box. Okay, let's find the 0 point. Right, many of you have been asking me, the first thing you should do, right, before you actually start grinding is actually to find where your 0 point is. And 0 point is actually can be found easily by rotating your upper this collar until it is almost impossible to turn, and then you can actually use your finger to try to rotate the burr at the center. Right, you can hear the two burr rubbing each other. So that is actually 0 point. So I'm going to go slightly before that so that the two burr will have no chance to not touch each other when we do grinding, right? So this is actually the position of the 0 point. So now let's install back the grind indicator. So this is not our true 0. Now the 0 is slightly towards the right hand side. So now let's install the grind indicator. Right, and then we are ready to grind, right? So the grinder is already powered on, right? So let's grind straight away and see how it goes. Okay. I'll be using my original, the bellow and the anti-popcorn from my other grinders. Okay, so let's grind some beans. Right, these are already pre-dosed at 18 grams. So let's, of course, the first dose will have a bit of retention too, because now the grinder is trying to fill up all the spaces with all the fine coffee powder. Let's try to do it without the dosing cup adapter and see how it goes. So the only things I've added is actually the empty popcorn. Of course, there will be no coffee coming out because our grind adjustment is still at 0, right? So right now I'm going to increase the grinder adjustment to maybe around 15, and let's see how it goes now. Wow. Honestly speaking, I don't think this declumper is going to work very well, because when I try to bellow, right, there's nothing coming out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to open the grinder and see whether there's how's the retention like. So first of all, let me switch off the power. Okay, so the moment of truth will be out. So let's take a look at the inside. My goodness. I don't think this is an improvement. Right, look at what happened. Look at here. Right, the whole thing is choke. Right, can you see? The entire exit is choke. Right, so nothing is coming out. Yeah, I think this is not a very good improvement. Right, so even though this is the version 4, but then so far from my testing, right, the declumper is worse than before. But I think if I remove from the single layer, from the double layer, if I remove them, I remove the declumper, because now it comes with 2 layers. If I remove one of them, it should be able to work better. Right, so that's what I believe. So I have no idea why they included the 2 flaps. Do they ever test this in the factory? I'm not very sure. And yep, the version 4 Declumper is still not very good, right? Especially with the 2 layers. Okay, so right now I'm going to vacuum out everything, and then I'm going to test to remove one of the layer to see whether it actually works better. Right, so I'll still be doing the same. I'll be removing all the screws. Sorry, today's video is going to be longer. I thought that the new Declumper is going to work better. But yeah, it's actually worse than the silicone one, right? If you install the 2 layers. And there's going to be a lot of coffee ground, so it's going to get a bit messy. Okay, one of the live wire accidentally was removed, so I just have to check which one is the live wire. Okay, it is definitely this one. Right, so let me just plug it back. Okay, so let's see the situation now. Look at it. Let me zoom in and show you. The entire exit is choke. No coffee is coming out. So, right, if you have got the latest version 4, right, make sure, I believe this is the one that's going to cause choking, right? So let's dump this away, right, and use this one, right? Right, so this is the one that came with it, but it is very thin, so I'm not sure whether it is thick enough to hold the screw so that it creates a space between the screw and the inner burr. So let's just test this again with this. But before that, let's remove all the choke coffee that's there. Right, sorry for the noise. Right, so the Declumper comes with 2 pieces like that, right? And I think they have also installed this in the wrong order, right? They shouldn't be installing this inside, you know? This one is facing here, and this is actually blocking it. So I don't know, what's the logic for putting this piece behind, right? It should be, but anyway, this should be allowing the coffee to come out, right? But this piece is actually creating a lot of choking, right? I believe this is the one, right? So this is not going to work. So let's try this one. But the material is very thin, right? So I do not know whether it's going to hold really well. But let's test. Right, I'm quite sure the screw will be too deep inside. So if you remove the two layer of Declumper, right, you have to make sure that the screw doesn't touch the inner burr, right? Otherwise, it will cause the burr to jam, right? So let's install this back and see how it goes. No, this is too loose, so let me get a plier. Right, the reason why is that the live wire connection came loose, because this is a bit too, you can see it's pretty loose, so I'm just going to clamp it a little bit, so they will be tighter, so that it doesn't get shaken up easily. Right, so now should be good. Right, let's screw it back and see how it goes. Right, two more screws at the bottom. Okay. Okay, it's not locked in position. Wait a minute. Okay, sometimes the screw hole is a bit tricky. Okay. Okay, now it's good. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so now let's overturn this grinder. You can see how much coffee powder, how much coffee powder was stuck behind. Right, so let me clear this out. Right, so what we have removed is actually one of the layer. Okay, let's install the upper burr back, and then let's test the grinder again. Okay, we're going to find the 0 point again. Okay, let me plug in the power. Oh my god. Look at the coffee powder that's still coming out. Right now it comes out instantly. Right before that it was actually choking. Right, so that is actually the 0 point. Alright, so now let's really test the grinder one more time, right? Right, again, pre-dose 18 grams. Okay, forgot to screw the portafilter holder back. Right, and also adjust the grinder indicator to 15. Right, so let's test again, right? Yep, this is so much better. Right, so with one of the layer removed, right, this layer, right, this is, I think, is quite useless. Right, so now all the coffee is out. So now let's do one more time, right? This time I'm going to measure 18 grams and see how much is the retention, right? Right, let's dose 18 grams. Okay, 17.9. Right, to be fair, let's try to pump out as much coffee as possible. Let's turn on the grinder. Okay, I think most of the coffee are already out. Okay, so 17.9 gram now. So let's dose the coffee. Let's grind again. Okay, now observe the weighing scale. 18.1. So I think the retention is probably from the before, right? So there's about 0.2 gram. So I'm actually pretty happy with the one of the layer of the declumper remove. I'm not too sure why they always include two, and eventually we have to remove one of them. Like the version 1, they come with 2 silicone declumper, and version 2 they remove 1. Version 3, they come with the metal grind indicator without the improvement of any of the declumper. And version 4, they include 2 declumper with the thin PT flap, and yet through my tests, we have to remove one of them again. And if you are getting the latest version, the version 4, right, make sure that you remove this, right? Otherwise, your grinder will choke, and this is far worse than, right, the original stock silicone declumper. Right, it's far worse than this. If you don't remove, your grinder will definitely choke. Right, so I'm going to do one more test, which is testing on the coarse ground. Right, that means I'm going to grind coarse to see whether the declumper actually removes static issue, right? You know that this grinder is famous for it's a static monster, right? So let's adjust the grinder to about 55, right? That's let's do 60. The coarser you grind, the worse or the more static issues you're gonna get, right? Right. So now let's dose another 18 grams. Run out of coffee. Just give me a moment. Right. Okay. Right, 18 grams exactly. Right, these are some of the steel coffee that I have. Right, so now observe to see how's the static situation, right? Remember now we are actually grinding at 60. Okay, static is still pretty bad. I think that's just the inherent problem of this DF64. But now let's look at the retention. 18.3. So again, we are getting slightly more than before. So I believe you will need a little bit of time for the grinder to settle in. But more or less, with one of the declumper removed, right, you improve your retention tremendously, right? So if you are using the version 4, right, make sure that you remove this, right? Otherwise, this will give you hell a lot of problem, right? Right, so this is you once again. Thanks for joining me today, right? I hope that you find this information useful, right? If you are considering getting the new version of the DF64, right, do bear in mind that now I believe the new version comes with dual layer again, right? So I'm not too sure whether they're going to improve it version by removing one of the declumper. But so far, I find that the new declumper, if you remove one of them, it will work. And I think you will have less chance of clogging, right? Because there's quite a bit of holes and gaps between them. So I think it will work from now onwards as long as you remove one of them. And DF64 factory, please remove one of the declumper, which is this one, right? Because this is going to cause a lot of problem, right? So yeah, this one is a major problem. So you do not need this, right? But I believe you still need a spacer because this is very, very thin, right? You can see how thin this is, right? The stock declumper is this thin. This is version 3, right? It is very, very thin, right? So if you do not have a spacer, right, you will run into a risk of your screw hitting the burr, right? So I think at the moment, my version I think still works better, right? Or I shouldn't say better, it will work on par, and at least mine has a spacer at the back, so there's no danger of the screw touching the burr, no matter how hard you screw, how hard you drive the screw inside the screw thread, right? So this is Seah once again. Thank you for joining me, right? If you find my video useful, do consider subscribing to my channel, like my videos, and share this video with your friends who are also for fellow coffee lovers or grinder lovers like me, right? So yep. So I will see you in the next one. Stay safe and thanks for joining.
And this is something I've done behind the scene after I've grinded the coffee. The two declumper design is actually a terrible design. I have no idea why the factory stack the two PD film together. Even with a single layer, right, as you can see, after I tried to grind with single layer, the coffee still gets stuck behind, and I believe this will cause a lot of choking in the very near future. I'll be doing more tests to see with a single layer, is it going to be better.